Dad forgot to hang up the call. She's nothing, a failure, should have never been born. That's what he said. All those years, I was the one paying the mortgage. I didn't scream, I didn't cry. A week later, I sold my $830,000 luxury home and moved to another state, leaving them with nothing. Dad was stunned when the new owners moved in. Can you imagine the searing pain of hearing your own father, the man who shaped your world, whisper words that tear your very existence to shreds? She's nothing, he said. A failure. Should have never been born. He thought no one was listening, but I was. And in that moment, my entire life shattered. For years, I'd been their quiet benefactor, paying every cent on our $830,000 home where they lived, rent-free. I'd poured my life into them, sacrificing everything. But in that moment, there were no screams, no tears. Just a cold, steel-hard decision. Exactly 1 week later, I sold that luxury house and moved to another state. I left them to face the stark consequences of their words alone. My name is Audrey Foster. At 31, I'd built what most people would call a wildly successful life. My alarm would jolt me awake at 5 a.m. every morning, pulling me out of bed for an intense hour-long workout in the home gym I'd set up in the basement of my beautiful house in the Chicago suburbs. Protein smoothie, quick shower, and I was out the door by 7:15, battling the downtown traffic to get to my office at Hartman Financial Advisors. To my colleagues, I was the poster child for hard work paying off. After nailing my MBA at Northwestern, I'd landed a financial analyst position and climbed the ranks fast. 3 promotions in 5 years? Yeah, I was on the fast track, and my boss, Victoria Hayes, had even taken me under her wing as a mentor. Audrey, you're going places in this company, she'd tell me during our monthly check-ins. Your attention to detail and dedication to clients? Exactly what we value here. But what they didn't see, what they couldn't possibly know, was the silent burden waiting for me back home. 3 years prior, I'd finally bought my dream house, a gorgeous 4-bedroom colonial in an upscale neighborhood, valued at $830,000. I'd pictured living there alone, maybe eventually with a partner. Instead, within 2 months of moving in, my parents, Raymond and Margaret Foster, had moved in with me. See, my dad's construction business had just gone bankrupt. Again. It's just temporary, sweetheart, Mom had promised. Just until we get back on our feet. 3 years later, they were still there. And I was still paying for everything. The mortgage, utilities, groceries, their cell phone bills, even their car insurance. They contributed nothing. Not a single dollar. Dad spent his days applying for jobs he never seemed to get, while Mom volunteered at church and went to lunch with her friends every Wednesday. And then there was my sister, Heather. Every Wednesday evening, she'd bring her 3 kids over for family dinner. She married her high school sweetheart, Keith, had her first child at 21, and dropped out of community college. But you know what? My parents would just beam with pride whenever she walked through the door. There's our girl, Dad would say, wrapping her in a hug, barely even looking at me. After those dinners, I'd drag myself to my home office to catch up on work, exhaustion settling deep into my bones. The sheer weight of supporting everyone was crushing, honestly. But I'd convinced myself it was my duty. I was the successful one, after all. This was what a good daughter did. My best friend, Zoe Curtis, she never understood. Audrey, they're taking advantage of you, she'd tell me during our rare lunch dates. They're adults. They should be supporting themselves, not living off their daughter. They're my parents, I'd always reply, that familiar defense coming out automatically. Dad's still looking for work, and Mom never had a career. What am I supposed to do, throw them out on the street? Zoe would just shake her head, knowing there was no point arguing. She'd known me since college. She'd watched me achieve every single goal I'd ever set for myself, only to watch me hand over all the rewards to my family. That Wednesday morning, I had this massive presentation. A potential new client, a retirement fund worth millions. Victoria, my boss, had entrusted me with a lead, a clear sign she was grooming me for that next level. Land this account, she'd told me, and we'll be talking about that senior analyst position. As I straightened my blazer, giving myself one last check before heading out, I spotted my dad in the kitchen, sipping coffee, scrolling on his phone. Big day today, Dad, I said, trying to inject some genuine enthusiasm into my voice. Wish me luck. He barely even looked up. Sure, honey. Good luck. The familiar sting of disappointment was there, but I pushed it down. Today wasn't about that. Today was about my career, about proving to Victoria and to myself that I deserved that promotion. Today was about my future. Little did I know, that future was about to get a seismic jolt. The presentation? It went better than I could have ever hoped. The clients were totally engaged, asking insightful questions. By the end, they were nodding along with my recommendations. Victoria caught my eye across the conference room and gave me this subtle thumbs up. As we wrapped up, the CEO of the retirement fund shook my hand firmly. Miss Foster, you've clearly done your homework. We'll be in touch very soon. After they left, Victoria pulled me aside. That was excellent work, Audrey. I think we've got them. Take the rest of the day off. You've earned it. Excitement bubbled in my chest as I packed up my materials. I couldn't wait to share the news with someone. And despite everything, my parents were the first people I thought of. Maybe, just maybe, this time Dad would actually be proud. I checked my watch, 2:30 p.m. They wouldn't be expecting me for hours, which meant I could surprise them with the good news, maybe even suggest we celebrate with dinner out. But when I pulled into our driveway, I noticed both their cars were there. Unusual for a Wednesday afternoon, Mom usually had her book club. I entered quietly through the side door that led directly to the kitchen, planning to announce my early arrival and my success. Then I heard it. My father's voice, coming from his bedroom, which he'd converted into a home office. He was on a video call, his voice carrying clearly down the hallway. Yeah, Stan, we're still living with her. What choice do we have? The housing market is ridiculous these days. I recognized the voice on the other end as Stanley Bennett, my dad's friend from his old construction days. I was about to call out when something in my father's tone, something I couldn't quite place, made me freeze. Hold on, let me end this call properly, he said. Audrey's always nagging me about just hitting the red button. I heard a click, followed by my father's voice again. There, now we can talk freely. Except he hadn't ended the call. I could still hear Stanley's voice, tinny through the speakers, asking if he was still there. My father had only minimized the window, thinking he'd disconnected. Then came the words that stopped my heart. She's nothing, Stan. A failure. Should have never been born. The words hit me like a physical blow. I froze in the hallway, completely unable to move forward or retreat. Sure, she makes good money, my father continued, his voice absolutely dripping with disdain. But what kind of life is that? 31 and still single. Married to her job. It's pathetic. And she lords it over us like we should be grateful she's letting us live here. At least you've got a roof over your head, Stanley's voice chimed. Yeah, but at what cost? My dignity? Do you know how embarrassing it is when people ask what I do and I have to admit my daughter supports me? It's humiliating. Then, his tone shifted, softening immediately. Pride evident in every word. Now, what about Heather? She doing okay? There's my real achievement. 3 beautiful grandkids, a solid marriage. Sure, she didn't go to some fancy college like Audrey, but she's got what matters. A family love. Keith's business is doing well enough. They're talking about buying a bigger house soon. I heard the bedroom door open, and my mother's voice joined the conversation. Who are you talking to, Ray? Just Stan. We were discussing the girls. Oh. My mother's voice grew quieter as she moved closer to the computer. Did you tell him about Audrey's promotion? The one she won't stop talking about. What's there to tell? My father scoffed. Another rung on the corporate ladder. Big deal. I know, my mother sighed. Sometimes I wonder where we went wrong with her. So cold. So focused on money and status. Not like our Heather. Exactly. My father agreed. The only good thing about living here is we're saving a fortune. Another year or 2 and we can afford to put a down payment on a place near Heather and the kids. That's the dream, my mother agreed. I'm tired of walking on eggshells around Audrey, pretending to be interested in her work stories. Remember last Christmas when she gave us those expensive watches? My father laughed. Like we needed a reminder of how much money she has. So tasteless. My stomach lurched. Those watches had cost me $3,000. I'd spent weeks researching the perfect style for each of them, wanting to give them something special that would actually last. Well, we'll just keep playing the game for now, my mother said. She needs us more than we need her, even if she doesn't realize it. Without us, who does she have? No husband, no kids. Just that awful friend Zoe who keeps putting ideas in her head. True, my father mused. Remember when Zoe convinced her to take that trip to Cabo instead of helping us with the bathroom remodel? Selfish. Both of them. I'd canceled that trip at the last minute, by the way, after my father complained about needing help with house projects. I'd lost the deposit and used my vacation days to paint and tile instead. The conversation continued, but I couldn't bear to hear another word. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. Nausea swept over me in waves. I backed away silently, so grateful I'd worn flats instead of my usual heels. Somehow, I made it back to my car without being detected. As I sat behind the wheel, my hands were shaking so badly I couldn't even insert the key. Fragments of their conversation echoed in my mind. A failure should have never been born. My real achievement. Saving a fortune. The girl they wished had never existed was bankrolling their comfortable retirement. I don't even remember driving to Zoe's apartment. I must have operated on autopilot, muscle memory guiding me through familiar streets while my mind replayed 31 years of memories in a harsh, new light. The times my academic achievements were acknowledged with distracted nods while Heather's C+ in art was displayed proudly on the refrigerator. The college graduation party they left early because Heather's son had a cold. The countless times they'd needed loans that were, predictably, never repaid. By the time I parked outside Zoe's building, my shock had hardened into something else. Something cold. Something clear. Something utterly certain. For the first time in my life, I saw my family exactly as they were. Not as I desperately, foolishly, wanted them to be. They said what? Zoe's voice practically echoed through her apartment as I recounted everything I'd overheard. Her normally calm demeanor had given way to pure, unadulterated rage on my behalf. Her hands were flying, gesticulating wildly as she paced back and forth. "You need to confront them right now," she insisted, reaching for her phone. "I'll drive you back there myself." I just shook my head, curling deeper into the corner of her couch. "I can't go back there tonight. I can't even look at them, knowing what they really think of me." Zoe sat beside me, taking my trembling hands in hers. "Then stay here as long as you need." The initial shock was slowly wearing off, leaving room for memories to surface. Moments I'd dismissed, rationalized away as just how things were, now returned with painful, crystal clarity. Like the time I'd used my entire first year-end bonus, $15,000, to pay off the remaining debts from my father's failed business. He'd accepted the check with a casual, "Thanks, kiddo," before immediately calling Heather to discuss her eldest son's private school applications. Or the European vacation I'd planned for years, postponed 3 times to cover what they called family emergencies. The first for Dad's knee surgery, which, weirdly, didn't stop him from playing golf 2 weeks later. The second for Mom's minor car accident, needing a replacement vehicle they couldn't afford. The third for Heather's unexpected medical bills when insurance wouldn't cover her youngest daughter's treatment. When I finally moved into my dream house, the crown jewel of my achievements, they'd shown up 3 weeks later with suitcases and sad stories about their landlord selling their rental property. And what did I do? I gave them the master bedroom with its ensuite bathroom, moving my own things to the smaller guest room to accommodate them. My privacy, my space, my sanctuary, surrendered without a fight. Because, that's what good daughters do. "I've defended him so many times," I whispered to Zoe, recalling conversations with colleagues who'd questioned my father's business acumen after meeting him at company events. People would ask why he kept failing, and I'd make up excuses. Bad economy, dishonest partners, bad luck. "Because you're loyal," Zoe said firmly. "That's not a character flaw, Audrey." My phone buzzed with a text from Danielle Parker, my assistant at work. "Great job today. Victoria's thrilled. Did you go homesick? Let me know if you need anything." I'd completely forgotten about the presentation's success, the very reason I'd gone home early in the first place. It seemed so trivial now, utterly overshadowed by the revelation that had just upended my entire world. "My whole identity has been built around being the good daughter," I said, the realization settling heavily on my shoulders. The responsible one. The successful one. But they never wanted that. They wanted me to be Heather. Zoe snorted. "Heather? Who can barely keep a job and relies on her husband's family business to survive. That Heather." "They don't see it that way," I explained. "They see her children. Her marriage. The normal life I've never had because I've been too busy working to support everyone." As night fell, I found myself scrolling through property laws on my phone, researching homeowner rights. The house was solely in my name. They had no legal claim to it. No right to stay if I asked them to leave. The thought sent a strange, powerful mixture of guilt and liberation coursing through me. The next morning, Zoe used her connections to get me an emergency session with her therapist, Dr. Amelia Richardson. "What you're describing is a profound betrayal," Dr. Richardson said, after I'd recounted the previous day's events. "It's normal to feel disoriented, angry, even grief-stricken. You're mourning the parents you thought you had." "I keep wondering if I should just confront them," I admitted. "Scream at them. Make them understand how much they've hurt me." She leaned forward slightly. "Would that give you what you need?" I considered the question. No, I finally said. "They'd deny it, or minimize it, or turn it around on me somehow. They always do." "Then what would give you what you need?" The answer came with surprising clarity. "Freedom. I need to be free of them. Of the obligation, the guilt, the constant striving for approval I'm never going to get." "And how might you achieve that freedom?" I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I found myself mentally calculating numbers. My savings, the house's value, the cost of starting over somewhere new. Somewhere without the crushing weight of familial expectations. By the time I left Dr. Richardson's office, a plan was forming. Not a confrontation. An exit strategy. I would not give them the satisfaction of my anger or my tears. I would simply remove myself from the equation of their lives as cleanly and completely as possible. That night, staying at Zoe's again, I created a detailed spreadsheet. Steps to take. Calls to make. Research to complete. By dawn, I had a comprehensive exit plan mapped out, a timeline for extracting myself from the life I'd built around people who had never truly wanted me in theirs. As I finally drifted off to sleep, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years, the lightness of a decision made, a path forward clear. For once, I would put myself first, and I wouldn't apologize for it. For the first time in my entire career, I called in sick the next morning. Victoria was incredibly understanding. "You've banked enough goodwill to take a month off if you needed to," she told me, though concern colored her voice. I assured her it was just a 24-hour bug, nothing serious. The lie tasted strange on my tongue. I'd always been pathologically honest, especially at work. But now, deception came easily. Maybe I'd learned from the best. My first call was to Trevor Michaels, my financial advisor. We'd met monthly for years as I built my investment portfolio, but I'd never heard the urgency in his voice that I did when I explained I needed an emergency meeting. "I can see you at 11, he said. "Is everything okay, Audrey?" "It will be," I replied, surprised by my own certainty. Trevor's office was on the 30th floor of a downtown high-rise, all glass and chrome with incredible views of Lake Michigan. As I explained my situation, sanitized, of course, without the messy emotional details, his expression remained professionally neutral. "So, you want to liquidate some investments to purchase a new property in another state, while simultaneously selling your current home," he clarified. "Yes. I need to know how much I can access quickly without penalties and what the tax implications will be." He typed rapidly, pulling up my accounts. "You're in a strong position. The market's favorable for sellers right now, especially in your neighborhood. What locations are you considering for relocation?" "Denver," I said. The decision had been made somewhere between Zoe's apartment and his office. I've always loved the mountains. By the time I left Trevor's office, I had a clear picture of my financial standing and a referral to a real estate agent who specialized in quick sales for professional clients. Natalie Wells called me before I'd even reached my car. "I understand you're looking for a discreet, expedited sale," she said. "No preamble necessary. I can be at your property this afternoon to assess." "Not today," I replied quickly. "My parents are home. Tomorrow morning would be better. They have a standing breakfast with friends on Fridays." "Parents living with you?" she asked, her tone shifting slightly. "Are they co-owners?" "No," I said. "The property is solely in my name." "Good. That simplifies things considerably." My next call was to a real estate agent in Denver, recommended by Natalie. Melissa Johnson specialized in relocating professionals and totally understood my need for discretion and speed. "I can start sending you virtual tours today," she assured me. "Based on your budget and preferences, I already have several properties in mind." The lawyer came next. Patricia Alvarez, a referral from a colleague who'd gone through a complicated divorce. She confirmed what I already suspected. As the sole owner, I had every right to sell my property, regardless of who was living there. "You'll need to follow proper eviction procedures if they refuse to leave voluntarily," she cautioned, but given the circumstances, I doubt it will come to that. By mid-afternoon, the framework of my new life was taking shape. I drove back to my house, timing my arrival for when I knew my mother would be at her weekly hair appointment. My father was likely in the basement, where he'd set up a makeshift workshop for projects he never completed. I slipped into my bedroom and began methodically sorting through my personal items. Important documents went into a secure portfolio: birth certificate, passport, insurance policies, property deeds. Jewelry and small valuables were next, packed into a carry-on suitcase I could easily transport to Zoe's. In the back of my closet, I found a box of childhood mementos I'd kept through multiple moves: diaries with little locks, school awards, photographs. I opened one diary from when I was 12. The handwriting, large and looping. "Dad forgot my science fair today. Mom said he was too busy with work, but I saw him watching TV when I got home. Heather got a new bike for getting a B in math. I got all A's again, but no one noticed." Page after page documented small betrayals, moments of blatant favoritism so normal to my childhood self that I'd recorded them matter-of-factly, without complaint. In another box, I found handmade gifts I'd created for my parents over the years: a clay pencil holder for Dad's desk, painted with careful detail, a beaded necklace for Mom that had taken weeks to string. Both items were dusty and unused, stored away rather than displayed or worn. I was carefully replacing these boxes when my phone rang. It was Heather. "Hey sis, are you okay? Mom said you didn't come home last night." I hesitated, unsure how much to reveal. Heather and I had never been close. The age gap and our parents' obvious favoritism had created a chasm between us. But she wasn't cruel, just self-absorbed in the way people can be when they've always been the center of attention. "I'm staying with Zoe for a few days," I said finally. "I need some space." "Space from what? Did something happen?" "We arranged to meet at a coffee shop halfway between our homes." I wasn't ready to tell her everything, but I needed to gauge her reaction, to see if she'd been part of their conversations about me. The cafe was busy, providing both ambient noise for privacy and enough witnesses to prevent a scene. Heather arrived looking harried, her blonde hair, so like our mother's, pulled back in a messy ponytail. She'd always been the pretty one, the charming one, while I was the smart one, a distinction that felt more like a consolation prize than a compliment. "What's going on?" she asked as soon as she sat down. "Mom's freaking out. She thinks you're having some kind of breakdown." "I'm selling the house," I said bluntly, watching her face carefully. Her eyes widened. "What? Why? You love that house." "I'm moving to Denver. I've already started the process." "Denver? But what about Mom and Dad? Where will they go?" There it was. Her first thought was for our parents, not for me. But there was genuine confusion in her expression, not calculation. "They'll figure it out," I said, my voice steady. "They're adults. But they can't afford their own place right now. Dad's still looking for work, and Mom's never had a real job." "I'm aware," I replied, unable to keep the edge from my voice. "I've been supporting them completely for 3 years. Paying the mortgage, utilities, groceries. Everything. Did you know that?" She had the grace to look uncomfortable. "I knew you were helping them out." "Helping implies they contribute something." "They don't." Heather fidgeted with her coffee cup. "Look, I would help if I could, but with 3 kids and Keith's business just getting established." "I'm not asking you to help," I interrupted. "I'm telling you what's happening. I'm selling my house and moving away because of Mom and Dad." "Did they do something?" For a moment, I considered telling her everything, the overheard conversation, the years of dismissal and disrespect. But looking at her worried face, I realized she truly didn't know. She'd been shielded from the darker side of our parents, cushioned by their unconditional love and approval. "I need a change," I said instead. "The house will sell quickly. They'll need to find their own place." "They could stay with us temporarily," she offered, though without much enthusiasm. "The guest room is small, but that's between you and them." I stood up, signaling the end of our conversation. "I just wanted you to know directly from me." As I walked away, she called after me. "Audrey, wait. Are you okay?" "Really?" I turned back, surprised by the genuine concern in her voice. For a brief moment, I saw past the golden child persona to the sister who had once, long ago, defended me against our father's criticism when I'd broken his favorite coffee mug. I answered honestly. That afternoon, I had a video interview with Westbrook Financial in Denver, leveraging connections from a conference I'd attended last year. The hiring manager, Benjamin Clark, remembered me well. "We'd be lucky to have someone with your expertise, Audrey. The team lead position just opened up last month." Perfect timing. Perfect timing indeed, as if the universe was finally aligning to help me break free. My final call of the day was to Victoria. I owed her the courtesy of transparency, at least professionally. "Denver," she repeated after I'd explained my situation. "That's unexpected. We have a satellite office there, you know. Not as prestigious as Chicago, but growing. Would you consider a transfer instead of resignation?" The offer took me by surprise. "You'd help me transfer?" "Audrey, you're one of our top performers. I'd rather keep you in the Hartman family, even if it's from a distance. Think about it. Let me know by Monday." As I ended the call, I realized I'd accomplished more in one day toward my own happiness than I had in years of striving to please my parents. The irony wasn't lost on me. It took discovering their true feelings to finally prioritize my own. That evening, I returned home for dinner, watching my parents through new eyes as they discussed their day, complained about neighbors, asked perfunctory questions about my illness. I answered pleasantly, passed the potatoes, and excused myself early, claiming fatigue. In my room, I continued preparations, transferring documents to a secure cloud storage, researching moving companies, creating new bank accounts my parents couldn't access. With each step, the fog of obligation and guilt that had clouded my judgment for so long began to lift. In its place was something unfamiliar but welcome: determination, uncomplicated by the need for approval. 1 week later, my house was officially on the market. Natalie had worked miracles, arranging for professional staging and photography while my parents were out. The listing went live on Thursday evening, described as a luxury family home in prestigious neighborhood, priced to sell quickly. "We'll hold an open house this Sunday," Natalie informed me. "Based on comparable properties and current market conditions, I expect multiple offers by Monday morning." I nodded, scrolling through the listing photos on my laptop. The house looked beautiful, spacious and bright, totally devoid of the tension that had filled it in recent months. "I'll make sure my parents are out during the open house," I told her. About that, Natalie hesitated. "Have you told them yet?" "They'll find out soon enough." And soon enough came that very evening. I arrived home from work to find my father standing in the driveway, arms crossed, face thunderous. Beside him, my mother wrung her hands, her expression oscillating between hurt and anger. "What the hell is this?" Dad demanded, pointing to the for sale sign Natalie had installed that afternoon. I walked past him, unlocking the front door with steady hands. "It's exactly what it looks like. I'm selling the house." They followed me inside, my mother's voice rising to a pitch I recognized from childhood tantrum management. "You can't just sell our home without discussing it with us first." I set my briefcase down carefully on the entryway table. It's not our home. It's my home. My name is on the deed, the mortgage, and every utility bill. I've made every payment for 3 years. So that gives you the right to throw your own parents out on the street? My father's face was turning the dangerous shade of red that had intimidated me since childhood. But I wasn't a child anymore. I'm selling a property I own. What you do next is up to you. My mother stepped between us, tears already forming. Audrey, sweetheart, what's gotten into you? Is this about work? Are you under too much stress? This isn't an impulsive decision, I replied, my voice level. The house has been professionally staged and photographed. The listing went live last night. There's an open house scheduled for Sunday. Sunday? This Sunday? My father sputtered. Where are we supposed to go? I've made reservations for brunch at the Drake, I informed them. My treat. You should be gone from 11 to 3. My mother's tears dried up instantly. You expect us to go to brunch while strangers walk through our home? My home, I corrected again. And yes, that's exactly what I expect. My father pulled out his trump card. I'm calling Heather. She'll talk some sense into you. I shrugged, the gesture so foreign to my usual accommodating body language that they both stared. Call whoever you want. An hour later, we were seated in our living room, in a twisted parody of a family meeting. Heather had arrived, kids in tow, her husband Keith trailing behind, looking deeply uncomfortable. The children had been dispatched to the backyard, leaving the adults to what my father ominously called sorting this mess out. Audrey, Heather began, clearly designated as the mediator. I understand you're going through something right now, but selling the house seems extreme. It's not extreme, I countered. It's a practical decision. I'm moving to Denver for a new job opportunity. Keith, who had always been peripheral to our family dynamics, spoke up unexpectedly. Denver's a great market right now. Growing tech sector, outdoor lifestyle. Smart move professionally. My father shot him a glare that could have melted steel. Not helpful, Keith. Just saying, career-wise, it makes sense. My mother ignored this tangent. But why so suddenly? Why not give us time to find a place, get organized? The closing will be in 30 days. That's standard. You have a month to make arrangements. A month? My father exploded. To find an apartment? Pack everything? In this rental market, it's impossible. I managed to organize selling a house and relocating to another state in a week, I pointed out. I'm sure, between the two of you, finding a local apartment in a month is doable. Heather looked between us, clearly struggling with divided loyalties. Mom, Dad, Audrey does have the right to sell her own house. Maybe we should focus on helping you find a new place. My father's betrayed expression would have been comical if it weren't so utterly predictable. You're taking her side? I'm not taking sides. I'm being practical. If the house is for sale, you need somewhere to live. The conversation deteriorated from there, with my parents cycling through anger, guilt-tripping, and finally, bargaining. Just give us 3 months, my mother pleaded. Until after the holidays. The market is hot right now, I replied. Waiting would be financially irresponsible. My father snorted. Since when do you care about money more than family? The irony of his statement hung heavy in the air between us. If only he knew how his own words about me had set this whole thing in motion. But I held my tongue, refusing to give away the knowledge that fueled my resolve. By Sunday, the tension in the house was unbearable. My parents had shifted to cold silence, a tactic they'd employed throughout my childhood when I disappointed them. We drove to brunch in complete silence, the atmosphere in the car thick with unspoken recriminations. At the Drake, I received a text from Natalie. Huge turnout. At least 40 parties so far, several very interested. Monday morning brought news that exceeded even Natalie's optimistic projections. We have 7 offers, she announced when I called her from work. The highest is $875,000, all cash, 21-day close, minimal contingencies. Accept it, I said without hesitation. Are you sure? We could counter, maybe push them to $885,000. The speed is more important to me than squeezing out another $10,000. By the time I returned home that evening, I had a signed purchase agreement and a closing date, June 17th, exactly 3 weeks away. The buyers had waived the inspection contingency based on the home's age and condition, requiring only a standard appraisal for their lender. Meanwhile, Melissa in Denver had found me a perfect apartment, a 2-bedroom with mountain views in a secure building downtown, walking distance to my new office. I can hold it with a deposit, she said. It'll be available June 20th if that timing works for you. 3 days after closing. Just enough time to drive from Chicago to Denver with whatever possessions I decided to keep. The next phase was sorting and packing. I hired a professional organizer, Laura Bennett, who specialized in downsizing. Think of it as curating your life, she suggested as we stood in my bedroom, surveying the accumulated possessions of my adult life. Keep only what serves your new chapter. Together, we created 3 categories: keep, sell/donate, and discard. My wardrobe was ruthlessly edited, the formal business attire of Chicago banking giving way to Denver's more casual tech culture. Furniture that wouldn't fit in my new apartment was consigned to high-end resale shops. Books were boxed for donation to the local library, save for a carefully selected collection I couldn't bear to part with. My colleague Danielle volunteered to help one weekend, arriving with coffee and an efficient attitude that matched my own. Victoria is in denial, she confided as we wrapped framed photographs in bubble wrap. She keeps telling everyone you'll change your mind before the transfer paperwork goes through. Not a chance, I replied, carefully packing away a photo of my college graduation, the only one where both my parents appeared genuinely proud of me. Had that been real, or just for the camera? As we worked, memories surfaced of my ex-boyfriend Connor, who'd never understood my family dynamics. You drop everything whenever they call, he'd complained during our last fight. It's like you're their parent, not the other way around. I'd ended things shortly after, convinced he was being selfish for not understanding my family obligations. Now, I wondered if he'd seen what I'd been blind to all along. By the second week, the house was half-packed, my life sorted into neat, labeled boxes. The Denver job offer had been formalized with a generous relocation package and starting salary that exceeded my Chicago position. Victoria had reluctantly processed my transfer request, extracting a promise that I'd train my replacement before leaving. My parents' efforts to find their own place had been half-hearted at best. My father made a show of circling apartment listings in the newspaper, but complained that everything was too expensive or too small. My mother mentioned moving in with Heather temporarily with increasing frequency, despite Heather's obvious reluctance during our family calls. 3 days before closing, I returned home to find them waiting for me in the living room. Heather was beside them, looking uncomfortable. The formal arrangement of furniture, them on the sofa, a chair positioned opposite, made it clear this was an intervention. "We need to talk," my father began, using the authoritative tone that had once sent me scrambling to please him. "This has gone far enough." "Far enough," I repeated, setting my purse down but remaining standing. "The movers come tomorrow. The closing is in 3 days. This isn't a negotiation." "Audrey, please sit down," my mother said, patting the chair they'd positioned like I was a defendant before a judge. "We're worried about you." Heather nodded, though her expression was conflicted. "We just want to understand what's happening. This isn't like you." I sat, crossing my legs and folding my hands in my lap. The poised professional, even in the midst of family drama. What exactly isn't like me? Making a career decision? Moving to a new city? Millions of people do these things every day. Abandoning your family without warning, my father clarified, his jaw tight. Throwing your parents out of their home. It's not abandonment, it's relocation. And it's not their home, it's mine. Heather winced at my tone, but I continued. "I've given you 3 weeks' notice, which is more than fair." "Fair?" My mother's voice rose, tears already gathering. She'd always been able to cry on command, a skill I'd both envied and resented. "After everything we've done for you." The question hung in the air, so absurd I almost laughed. Everything they'd done for me? What exactly did they think that entailed? "Mom," Heather interjected gently, "maybe we should focus on solutions. Audrey has made her decision about the house." My father wasn't ready to concede. No daughter who respected her parents would do this. "It's selfish and ungrateful. I expected better from you, Audrey. You've always been a disappointment, but this takes it to a new level." There it was. A disappointment. The same word he'd used with Stanley, not knowing I could hear. The final thread of my restraint snapped. "A disappointment?" I repeated, my voice deadly calm. "Like when you told Stanley I was nothing. A failure? Should have never been born?" The color drained from my father's face. Beside him, my mother went completely still. "That's right," I continued, my eyes locked on his. 3 weeks ago, you forgot to hang up your call properly. I heard everything. Every word. About how pathetic I am. How embarrassed you are to live with me. How Heather is your real achievement, while I'm just the ATM funding your comfortable retirement." Heather's gasp was audible. "Dad, what is she talking about?" My father recovered quickly, his expression shifting to defensive indignation. "You were eavesdropping on a private conversation." "I came home early to share good news about a client presentation," I shot back. "You were broadcasting your conversation through the whole house because you can't operate video call software properly." "You clearly misunderstood," my mother interjected, reaching for my hand. I pulled away before she could touch me. "Whatever you think you heard, I heard you too, Mom. Joining in about how cold I am, how focused on money and status. How you're tired of walking on eggshells around me and pretending to be interested in my work stories. How the expensive Christmas watches I bought you were tasteless. How you're both just playing the game until you can afford to move near Heather." My mother's mouth opened and closed, no words emerging. Beside her, my father switched tactics. "Everyone vents sometimes, Audrey. You're taking things out of context. Of course we appreciate everything you do for us. Do you?" I reached into my bag and pulled out a folder I'd prepared for this moment, though I hadn't been sure it would come. Let me show you what everything looks like. I opened the folder and removed a spreadsheet, sliding it across the coffee table toward them. This is a complete accounting of what I've spent supporting you both for the past 3 years. Mortgage payments, $14,400, $14,200, and $36. Groceries and household expenses, $28,500. Car insurance, cell phone bills, medical expenses not covered by Medicare, $22,375. Home repairs and improvements, $31,900. I turned to a second page. Plus the loans that were never repaid, Dad's new truck after the bankruptcy, $42,000. Mom's cosmetic dental work, $8,400. The Florida vacation last winter, $6,700. Heather's children's private school application fees that you insisted on covering, $3,600. Heather's head snapped up. What? They told me you offered to pay those. I did, I confirmed, after they pressured me. Just like I've been secretly funding your children's college accounts for the past 5 years. $500 a month, automatically transferred. That's $30,000 they haven't bothered to tell you about. The look of shock on her face confirmed what I'd suspected. Our parents had taken credit for my financial contributions to her children's future, just as they'd taken credit for my success when it suited them. You've been supporting us, yes, my father acknowledged grudgingly. But that's what family does. We raised you. Put you through college. My scholarships and student loans put me through college, I corrected. Which I paid off myself. As for raising me, let's talk about that. I turned to Heather. Did you know Dad missed my high school graduation because Kelsey had a dance recital the same day? Heather frowned. That's not how they explained it to me. They said you told them not to come because you were embarrassed about Dad's bankruptcy. Of course that's what they told you. I shook my head. Years of collected slights and dismissals suddenly crystallized into a clear pattern. They've been playing us against each other our whole lives. Making you the golden child and me the responsible one, ensuring we never compared notes. My mother stood abruptly. This is ridiculous. We've always loved both our daughters equally. Really? I shot back. Then why did you tell Stanley that Heather is Dad's real achievement, while I'm just a pathetic workaholic? Why did you spend more on Heather's prom dress than you did on my entire college dorm setup? Why have you attended every single one of her children's birthday parties, but forgot mine for 3 years running? The silence that followed was deafening. My father stared at the financial spreadsheet, seemingly unable to dispute the concrete evidence of my support. My mother had given up on tears and was now looking at me with something close to hatred. Her mask of maternal concern completely dropped. I don't expect answers, I continued, gathering the papers and returning them to my bag. I don't even want them anymore. What I want is for you to understand exactly why I'm leaving. It's not about the money. It's about the decades of emotional manipulation and favoritism. It's about discovering that the people I've sacrificed everything for see me as nothing but a convenient resource. I turned to Heather, whose expression had shifted from confusion to dawning comprehension. I don't blame you. You didn't create the dynamic. They did. But I'm done with it. What about us? My father finally asked, gesturing between himself and my mother. Where are we supposed to go in 3 days? That's not my problem anymore. I've accepted a position with Westbrook Financial in Denver. I'm leaving the day after closing. You can't just abandon us, my mother insisted, panic replacing anger. We're your parents. Being a parent is more than biology, I countered. It's support, encouragement, and love. Things I've given you far more of than I've ever received. I stood up, signaling the end of the conversation. You can stay until closing day. After that, you're on your own. Heather rose as well, her expression troubled. Mom, Dad, maybe you could stay with us for a little while until you find a place? The speed with which they pivoted to their backup plan was almost impressive. My mother's tears returned on cue as she embraced Heather. Oh, sweetheart, we wouldn't want to impose. It's fine, Heather said, though her tone suggested it was anything but. The guest room is small, but it's just temporary. I caught her eye over our mother's shoulder, and for the first time in our adult lives, I felt a moment of true connection with my sister. A shared recognition of the manipulation we'd both been subject to in different ways. She gave me a small sad nod. As they discussed logistics, I quietly left the room. There was nothing more to say. The truth had been laid bare. The decision made. In 3 days, I would close this brutal chapter of my life and begin writing a new one, entirely on my own terms, free from the crushing weight of unrequited family obligation. Closing day arrived with a sense of finality that was both terrifying and utterly liberating. I met Natalie at the title company's office, signing document after document, initialing pages until my hand cramped. When the final paper was processed, she handed me a cashier's check for $823,450, the sale price minus the remaining mortgage balance and closing costs. Congratulations, she said, shaking my hand. Most of my clients are sad on closing day, but you look relieved. I am, I admitted. It's a fresh start. My parents had moved out the previous day, reluctantly relocating to Heather's guest room, just until we find the perfect place, as they'd put it. They'd taken far more than their personal belongings. Kitchen appliances I'd purchased, the new living room furniture, even bathroom fixtures that should have stayed with the house. I just let it go. The material things seemed insignificant compared to the emotional baggage I was finally leaving behind. After the closing, I returned to the empty house for one final walkthrough. Each room held memories. Some good, many tainted now by the knowledge of my parents' true feelings. The kitchen where I'd prepared countless family meals. The dining room where I'd endured subtle criticisms disguised as concern. The home office where I'd overheard the conversation that changed everything. I was standing in my old bedroom when Heather arrived, alone. I thought you might be here, she said, hovering in the doorway. The kids are with Keith's mom. I wanted to help with any last-minute things. I'm all packed, I replied, gesturing to the bare room. The movers took everything yesterday. She nodded, stepping further inside. I'm sorry, Audrey. About all of it. Her voice was soft. I had no idea they felt that way about you. I know, I assured her. It's not your fault. But I benefited from it, she acknowledged, surprising me with her insight. My whole life, I got the praise, the attention, the support. I never questioned why. Because it was normal to you. Why would you question it? We stood in silence for a moment, the weight of shared history heavy between us. Are we going to stay in touch? She finally asked after I move. I'd like to, I said honestly. You and the kids. We can video chat. Figure out a new relationship without them in the middle. She smiled tentatively. I'd like that too. Together, we walked through the house one last time, locking doors and closing blinds. At the front entrance, I handed her the spare key I'd been keeping for the buyers. Take care of yourself in Denver, she said, embracing me awkwardly. We'd never been physically affectionate siblings. Take care of yourself with them, I replied. Don't let them do to you what they did to me. Zoe was waiting in her car when I emerged, ready for our 2-day road trip to Denver. We'd planned it as an adventure, a cleansing journey from my old life to the new. Ready? She asked as I slid into the passenger seat. More than you know. As Chicago receded in the rearview mirror, the tension I'd carried for years began to dissolve. We crossed state lines, singing along to playlists, stopping at quirky roadside attractions, talking about everything and nothing. With each mile, each smile, I felt lighter. More myself. Denver welcomed us with stunning mountain views and clear blue skies. My new apartment was everything Melissa had promised, modern, spacious, with floor-to-ceiling windows framing the distant Rockies. The furnishings I'd kept fit perfectly, and what was missing could be replaced in time. This place is gorgeous, Zoe declared as we uncorked a bottle of champagne that first night. To new beginnings. To freedom. I countered, clinking my glass against hers. Zoe stayed for a week, helping me settle in before flying back to Chicago. Her departure was bittersweet, my only connection to my old life returning to it. But I wasn't alone for long. My new position at Westbrook Financial began the following Monday. The team welcomed me warmly, and the work itself was engaging, similar enough to my previous role to leverage my expertise, different enough to present new challenges. My boss, Monica Evans, had a management style that emphasized results over FaceTime, a refreshing change from Chicago's more traditional banking culture. 1 month into my new life, I was establishing routines. Morning runs in a nearby park. Weekend hikes in the foothills. Evenings spent reading or exploring my new city. My apartment was truly taking shape, becoming a true reflection of my tastes, without accommodation for anyone else's preferences. The phone call from Heather came on a Sunday afternoon. How's Denver? She asked after pleasantries were exchanged. It's wonderful, I replied truthfully. How are things there? Her hesitation told me everything before she spoke. Challenging. Mom and Dad are still with us. They've looked at a few apartments, but always find reasons why they won't work. Let me guess. Too small? Too expensive? Wrong neighborhood. Exactly, she sighed. And they're not contributing to household expenses. Keith is getting frustrated. They did the same thing to me, I reminded her gently. It's a pattern. I know. She paused. I feel guilty even complaining to you about it after what you went through. Don't, I told her. We're both their daughters. Just in different roles. After we hung up, I felt a momentary pang of guilt. Had I simply shifted their burden from my shoulders to Heather's? But I reminded myself that Heather had Keith, a partnership to help bear the weight. And unlike me, she'd been raised with the tools to set boundaries, having seen them modeled by our parents her entire life. That night, I noticed a letter in my mail pile with my mother's distinctive handwriting. I set it aside, not yet ready to read whatever justifications or manipulations it contained. Instead, I went out onto my balcony, watching the sunset paint the mountains in shades of pink and gold. For the first time in memory, I was sleeping through the night, uninterrupted by anxiety dreams or insomnia. My appetite had returned, and with it, a few pounds that softened the gauntlet stress had carved into my face. Colleagues commented on my energy, my creativity, the fresh perspectives I brought to meetings. The following week, I received a video call request from Victoria. Curious, I accepted. "Denver agrees with you," she observed, studying me through the screen. "You look well." "I am well," I confirmed. "How are things at Hartman?" "Productive. Your replacement is working out, though she lacks your attention to detail." She paused, expression turning serious. "I should mention that your parents contacted the firm, asking for your new address." My stomach tightened. "What did you tell them?" "That it's against company policy to disclose personal information about employees." They were quite insistent. "Your father, especially." "Thank you for not sharing it." Victoria nodded. "I gathered there were personal reasons for your relocation." "It's not my business, but if you ever need anything." "I appreciate that," I said, touched by her unexpected support. After the call, I messaged Heather, asking her to reinforce with our parents that contacting my workplace was unacceptable. Her response was immediate. "Already handled it. They won't do it again." Perhaps the most unexpected development in my new life was my neighbor, Gabriel Thompson. We'd met in the elevator my first week, both carrying grocery bags from the organic market down the street. He was a software engineer, transplanted from Seattle 2 years earlier, with an easy smile and no expectations. Our friendship developed naturally, casual conversations in the lobby, evolving into coffee at the corner cafe, then hiking excursions on weekends. He didn't press for details about my past, accepting my vague explanations about wanting a change of scenery. In return, I didn't question the sadness that sometimes flickered across his features when certain topics arose. 6 months after my arrival in Denver, I stood on my balcony, watching the first snowfall of the season, a cup of hot chocolate warming my hands. My phone buzzed with a text from Gabriel. "Snow day hike tomorrow? The trails look magical after a fresh powder." I smiled, typing back my acceptance. Behind me, my apartment glowed with warmth. Smaller than my Chicago home, but truly mine in every way that mattered. On the wall hung a painting I'd commissioned of the Chicago skyline, my way of honoring the city that had shaped me without being defined by it. I was not the same person who had overheard that devastating conversation half a year ago. That Audrey had been defined by her role as the dutiful daughter, the family ATM, the responsible one. This Audrey was defined by her own choices, her own priorities, her own joy. The path to this freedom hadn't been easy or clean. There were still moments of doubt, flashes of the old guilt, but they were growing fainter, overwhelmed by the evidence that I had made the right choice for myself and, perhaps, ultimately, for everyone involved. December arrived with a flurry of snow and holiday decorations throughout Denver. My professional life had exceeded all expectations. 3 months after joining Westbrook Financial, I'd been promoted to team lead, managing 6 analysts and reporting directly to the regional director. My colleagues respected my expertise, and clients appreciated my straightforward approach to financial planning. Personally, I'd found my footing in this new city. My apartment, while more modest than my Chicago home, felt authentically mine. I'd purchased it in October after my rental lease expired, using a portion of the proceeds from the Illinois house. At 1,500 square feet, it was the perfect size for one person who valued quality over quantity. My friendship with Gabriel had deepened into something more, though we were taking things slowly. Both of us carried baggage from previous relationships, his a divorce, mine the complex entanglement of family dysfunction. We'd agreed to be intentional about our connection, building a foundation of honesty and respect before defining what we might become to each other. Every Saturday morning, I video called with Heather and her children. These conversations had become a highlight of my week, a way to maintain family bonds that were healthy and reciprocal. Her oldest, Tyler, was applying to colleges and often sought my advice on financial planning for education. The younger two, Emma and Lily, simply enjoyed showing me their latest art projects or soccer trophies. My parents, meanwhile, had made multiple attempts to reconnect on their terms. Email forwards with passive-aggressive subject lines like, "In case you're interested in your family," arrived regularly. Phone calls came on holidays and birthdays, filled with subtle guilt trips and thinly veiled criticisms of my abandonment. I'd finally read my mother's letter, finding exactly what I'd expected, a masterclass in manipulation disguised as maternal concern. "We only want what's best for you," she'd written. "Families should stay together, especially as parents age. Your father and I aren't getting any younger." Dr. Richardson, who continued our therapy sessions via video, helped me navigate these boundary violations without falling back into old patterns. "Forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation," she reminded me. "You can release the anger without allowing them back into a position where they can harm you." As Christmas approached, I faced a decision about holiday plans. Heather had invited me to visit Chicago, offering her home as neutral territory for a potential family gathering. Gabriel had suggested a ski weekend in Aspen as an alternative. A third option beckoned as well, hosting my own small celebration in Denver with local friends I'd made through work and my hiking group. What does your gut tell you? Dr. Richardson asked during our session. That I'm not ready to see them, I admitted. The thought of sitting across a table from my father, pretending everything is fine. I can't do it yet. Then don't. Your healing timeline is your own. I chose option 3, decorating my apartment with tasteful but festive touches. A small tree in the corner, twinkling lights along the balcony railing, handmade wreaths I'd created at a community workshop. I invited 8 people for Christmas Eve dinner, including Gabriel and Monica from work with her husband. The day before the gathering, my doorbell rang. A delivery person handed me a package from Heather. Inside were handmade ornaments from the children, along with a card that brought tears to my eyes. We miss you, but we understand. Building your own traditions is important too. Love you, sis. I hung the ornaments prominently on my tree, photographing them to send with my thanks. As I was about to put my phone away, it rang. A Chicago number I recognized immediately. My father. For a moment, I considered letting it go to voicemail. But something prompted me to answer. Hello, Audrey? His voice sounded older, smaller somehow. Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas, Dad, I replied, keeping my tone neutral. Your mother and I. He began, then cleared his throat. We're in our own place now. A small apartment near Heather. That's good. I'm glad to hear it. An awkward silence stretched between us. I waited, refusing to fill it as I once would have. Things have been difficult, he finally continued. Financially. The rental market here is worse than we expected. There it was. The real purpose of the call. I'm sorry to hear that. Another pause, longer this time. I could almost hear his internal struggle, pride wrestling with need, expectation battling with the new reality. Audrey, I know things ended badly, but we're your parents. We need. Dad, I interrupted gently but firmly. I'm not in a position to provide financial support anymore. My life has changed. My expenses and priorities are different now. But family helps family, he insisted, the familiar guilt tactic emerging. Yes, they do, I said. And that help can take many forms. I'm happy to stay in touch, to rebuild a relationship based on mutual respect. But my financial support is no longer an option. The silence that followed told me everything about his true priorities. When he spoke again, his voice was tight with suppressed anger. I see. Well, Merry Christmas then. Merry Christmas, Dad, I repeated, ending the call before he could continue. I stood on my balcony afterward, watching snowfall gently on the city below. 6 months ago, that conversation would have left me devastated, racked with guilt and self-doubt. Now, I felt only a calm certainty that I had made the right decision, not just for my financial well-being, but for my emotional health. Christmas Eve arrived with perfect Rocky Mountain clarity. Brilliant blue skies contrasting with snow-covered peaks in the distance. My apartment filled with delicious aromas as I prepared dinner, something I'd once done out of obligation, but now enjoyed as a creative expression. Gabriel arrived early to help, moving around my kitchen with comfortable familiarity. Your dad called again, he asked when I mentioned the conversation. Trying the direct approach this time, I confirmed, checking the roast in the oven. At least he was honest about wanting money. And you're okay with setting that boundary? I considered the question seriously. Yes. For the first time in my adult life, I feel like I'm making choices based on what's right for me, not what others expect or demand. He smiled, the expression warming his eyes. That's what I admire about you, Audrey. Your courage to redefine yourself. To navigate by your own stars. As my guests arrived, bringing wine and desserts and holiday cheer, I realized I'd created something precious here, a chosen family, built on genuine connection rather than obligation. We laughed and shared stories, exchanged small gifts, celebrated the season with joy, uncomplicated by past grievances or hidden agendas. After everyone had gone home, Gabriel lingered, helping me clean up despite my protests that it could wait until morning. I have something for you, he said, pulling a small, wrapped package from his jacket pocket. Not exactly a Christmas gift. More of a new tradition gift. Inside was a beautiful compass, its brass case engraved with mountains and stars. For someone who found her true north, he explained. Who had the courage to navigate by her own stars. My phone rang before I could respond, my parents, calling for their annual Christmas check-in. In previous years, I would have immediately answered, abandoning whatever I was doing to fulfill my filial duty. This time, I looked at Gabriel, at the compass in my hand, at the home I'd created for myself. I'll call them back tomorrow, I decided, silencing the ringer. Tonight is for new beginnings. As I stood on my balcony later that night, Gabriel's arm around my shoulders, watching the city lights twinkle beneath a canopy of stars, I felt a profound sense of peace settle over me. The journey from Chicago to Denver had been far more than geographical. It had been a reclamation of self, a declaration of worth, a lesson in the difference between obligation and love. I had sold a house worth $830,000. But what I gained in return was priceless. The knowledge that I deserved better, the strength to create boundaries, and the freedom to build a life that honored my own heart. So, what would you have done in my situation? Would you have confronted your parents immediately, or taken a similar approach to mine? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you've ever had to set difficult boundaries with family, share your experience. Your story might help someone else who's struggling with similar issues. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today. If you found value in my story, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more real-life experiences and lessons learned. Share this video with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to prioritize their own well-being. Until next time, remember that true family is defined by love and respect, not just by blood. Take care of yourselves.